down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm get to the bag. Ayy, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane moving fast. Ayy, let them all cross. If they hate, then let them hate and make a bigger boss. Ayy.
This episode is brought to you by SPI Logistics, the premier freight agent logistics firm in North America. For over 40 years, SPI has been diligently building the most successful freight agent network to provide first-class relationships for our shippers, receivers, and carrier partners. We are more than another transportation network. We are a dedicated team of professionals united by one singular purpose, and that is to expedite our agent success. All of our agents are set up for success on day one, as they are provided with a full suite of support staff that is ready to assist them with everything from after-hours emergencies to financial and administrative needs on a no-fee basis. This way, you can focus on continuing to grow your business. There is no financial risk to start, and you have the ability to earn up to 75% in commissions. If you are looking to take control of your financial future and build your business with the backing of one of the most successful logistics firms in North America, visit www.spi3pl.com to learn more. Do me a favor and let them know that the Freight Coach sent you.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back. We are not live, but this is the Freight Coach podcast. And I got a couple of great guys here on the show, and we're literally just going to talk about best practices. We've already been going for about 20 minutes, and then I realized I hadn't hit record yet. So we're going to do that, and we're just going to drop some knowledge. They've created something out there that I'm passionate about, and that's education, best practices, putting that all out there to help elevate the industry. And they've created the logistics war room amongst their day jobs as well, about going and putting all of this together and creating a community to help the industry out. So I have PJ Zarskus and Paul Lang on the show. Fellas, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Chris. Looking forward to it.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, I start these shows very, very similar. How'd you guys get your start in freight? When have you guys run with that, man? And we'll go from there, because I love telling everybody stories about what brought them into the transportation industry.
Sure. So been in logistics now 13 years. Same start as most people. Just kind of fell into it. Went to the career fair in college. Ended up going up to a booth, getting a job with Command Transportation. Moving to Chicago, was with Command Transportation until 2015 when Echo Global Logistics bought us out. And then stayed with Echo until 2021. Left and went to a freight tech startup in New York for a couple of years, and then came over and joined HMD.
Nice. PJ?
Yeah, so similar story in terms of timeline. In the industry, 13 years. Most of my career has been spent working on the asset side of the business. I started as a dispatcher, then kind of mastered sales and got into more kind of customer-facing roles. Had an opportunity to build out 2 brokerages for mid-sized like trucking companies, asset-based companies, 300 plus trucks at the time, and exited for a brief period of time. I opened a staffing company. So at a startup, we opened essentially like a dispatch service out of Ukraine, the western side of Ukraine. We ended up selling that, exiting, and ended up at Benefit HMD. Benefit was actually one of our clients at the time. And, kind of had a really good relationship. Henry, the owner of the company, gave me a really great opportunity to kind of, build out essentially a brokerage arm for his enterprise. And it's been here ever since. Still work, directly with our asset side quite a bit as well. We kind of we have like a centralized sales team. So I manage all of the, customer relationships for the most of them for the most part. And then we, work directly with our asset side there.
So what's that like, man? Balancing all of that out, because, when you're out there prospecting shippers, in any market, but especially right now, you're always hearing, we're asset only. Are you guys leveraging your guys' fleet, and kind of how are you balancing that out? Or is it like, no, we're a complete separate entity. We're out there selling just full pure brokerage?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way we sell right now is we're not selling a specific company when we're approaching our clients. We're first and foremost kind of identifying their needs and then applying the right solution. Right. To your point, yes, we do hear that, shippers want assets a lot more than brokers right now, right? For many different reasons. And many of them I don't agree with, because they're simply false. They're misconceptions. So it does help get a shipper's attention, the fact that you have assets, but it's not necessarily easy to convert them just because you have assets, right? Because you're limited to what your assets can do, right? And again, if, oftentimes we'll provide our assets, we'll put our assets forward, get set up, and then, they're like, absolutely no brokerage. We can't work with your brokerage side. Like, okay, well, am I pricing against other asset companies, or am I pricing against brokers as well? Because, if we're pricing against brokers at that point, there's really no way for us to compete, right? Because the common misconception, Chris, that I found is, and not to be naive, this isn't the case every time, but shippers will assume that if I remove the broker, the middle guy, I'm going to get a better rate. I'm going to have more control, more visibility over my capacity, right? Where my freight's at and all that. And on the flip end, it's usually the same thing with the carriers, right? So most of my career, again, has been on the asset side of the business, working with trucking companies. And, oftentimes we're like, well, if we build out our own sales team or, start our own brokerage, if we cut out the middleman, go direct to shipper, we're going to get better paying freight. Couldn't be further from the truth. Just not the case, right? So it does help to get in the door, and we've been very successful, but you're somewhat limited, right? Because you have specific corridors you're going after with your assets. There's things that they will do and they won't do, right? So, and also with HMD, they are a very legitimate carrier, right? Which is really good news. But right now, and we kind of briefly spoke about this before you hit record, it's difficult to compete because of what's going on in the industry, right? So they've been around for 30 years. All of their equipment is very well maintained, brand new trucks and trailers, fully OD compliant, right? So the competition, like our OpEx and CapEx, is significantly higher than some of these other guys, right? Because we can't run 650, 700 miles next day morning delivery, right? Where carriers that are a bit more flexible, right, can do a revenue play, lower rate per mile, and the math works out for them at the end of the week or month. But it definitely helps. It helps being asset-based.
No, and I feel like that's, it's tough to get to that point that you're describing right now in the sales process with a lot of shippers, right? Because it's like, when I'm out there prospecting, you're kind of stopped at the initial point of contact in today's market, right? Like it's very, like when you get a decision maker on the phone, it's rare, man. I'm saying, like, if I'm making 50 cold calls a day, out of the entire week, you might get one on the actual phone in that entire week. And then from there, it's like, again, you're following up, you're hitting the, shipping prompt or legit, operator, logistics, trying to get to anybody just to answer the phone, just to even qualify that prospect, right? So it's like from my seat, like I talk about often, we're very niche specific, right? Full truckload, little bit of Sprinter van work, but that's all for existing customers. When I'm prospecting people, I'm trying to find out, do you move full truckload or are you LTL? Right? Because at the end of the day, I do not do LTL. I don't want to waste your time. But to even get to that point, it's a lot more challenging than it has been in the past. And to have that deep sales conversation that a lot of people want to get to, it takes so much effort just to even get to that point. And then when you're sitting there and you're talking about what you guys are describing, like, hey, we're very legitimate. We are by the book. Our safety record speaks for itself. I mean, for a carrier to be in business for 30 years, for anybody to be in business for 30 years, that says a lot about how they operate. And to compete with what is out there. And again, I interview a lot of people for this show. I hear a lot of the behind the scenes chatter, and there's carriers out there who have a moratorium or a pause on their payments right now. So they are running at $1.20, $1.30 a mile. So it's like, there's a lot of talk out there. Why are rates as cheap as they are, and this and that? And we're not here to argue about cheap freight or anything like that or talk about that, but that's what you guys are competing against. That's what we're competing against. I mean, dude, I just, as a joke, and I was kind of hoping I didn't win the load, but like, I quoted a customer like $1.60 a mile on a dry van load. They said I was $300 above what they paid. $300.
They know what they're doing, right? And again, I don't even get upset about that, right? I can't blame the procurement guy, right? And for us, we're bootstrapped, right? So we don't have any private equity or VC money backing us. Everything is organic growth through actual, or good business, right? Good business practices. So the growth is not as quick because we can't just buy market share and do large revenue plays. But also it's a great differentiator, right? Because there's, the reason I think why, we're as successful as we are, we've grown more actually in the bad market, Chris, than we did in the good, is because we do have a lot of really great customers, a lot of really great partners, long-term guys that we've been doing business for a long time. And they like the, consistency and peace of mind knowing that, hey, we're working with a carrier who is, going to be around for a long time, right? Financially stable, doing things the right way. So it does help. But yeah, I mean, the rates out there are just right now insane, right? And again, you can't blame the procurement guys. I mean, if I'm in his, in that position, and a VC-backed brokerage comes to me and says, I'll give you $1 a mile rates, or I'll beat your lowest cost for, sure, award it to them for 6 months, for 12 months. If the service is there and they're doing good and you're able to spend someone else's money, go for it. I mean, you can't blame them. It sucks, but at the end of the day, if I was in their shoes, maybe I'd do the same thing, right?
I mean, I think we all would, right? Because everybody out there has a boss at the end of the day. A lot of the shipping managers, procurement managers, whatever on that side, they all have a boss that they have to answer to at the end of the day. And if somebody's coming to them with like a legit 15 to 20% cost savings and they can actually execute upon that, that in theory is money that they do not have to pass out down to the end user. And if we're looking at just the overall economy right now at scale, if you pull in consumer credit card spending, and credit card debt is at an all-time high out there right now, people are literally in the grocery stores going down those aisles and they're like, $1.50 for or $3 for a dozen eggs, or $1.80 for a dozen eggs. Who are you going to buy? Most Americans right now are going for the $1.80. And if we're tying that back into the supply chain, if there's somebody who's coming in and offering that, now that is a cost that they do not have to pass on to the end user at that point. So of course they're going to entertain that. But again, I feel like that's a short-term blip, that if you're looking at the longevity aspect of relationships, which everybody under the sun sits there and say, oh, we want long-term partners, we want long-term relationships, we want this, we want that. It's not sustainable, right? But I feel like the appetite for that style of sales is like slowly going away, because now we are fighting a whole new battle on the front of identity theft, fraud, double brokering, triple brokering, all of that stuff out there. And then some of these manufacturers are paying for freight 3 times now, because at the end of the day, people are coming after to get their money. And, again, so it's like, is the cost actually worth it in the long run? And I feel like more of the larger shippers out there, they are factoring a lot of that into their assessment on who they're going to work with. So it's like, I feel like the more financially stable companies that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years in the coming months or years are going to have a lot easier time to develop business, because the financial stability of their organizations are proven at that point. And that is going to be a larger factor coming up, because I feel like we are teetering on that edge of a severe tightening in the market, because again, you can pay attention to the financial data out there of companies, and, with Wells Fargo and all of these lenders are out there talking about this stuff.
Right.
It's got to break eventually, right? Because you can only max out so many credit cards. You can only not pay your bills for so long before people start seizing your assets.
Right.
And I wish,
go ahead.
I wish everyone had that thought process as well. But yeah, when you see brokers pushing their payment terms from 30 days to 45 or 60 to pay their carriers, they're living on borrowed time, trying to, live on the float and extend their runway a couple more months, or carriers delaying payments on their assets, making the minimum payments. People come to collect, I don't really know where my assets are. They're on the road. If you want to repo it, go find it. When people are going to those measures, it's bound to break.
Right. And the scary part is, they're still not profitable. They're not even paying for their assets. They're still manipulating logbooks and still can't, turn a profit, which is insane. That this just, goes to show how bad the market has gone. Right. But, also, I think there's quite a few things that could happen that could flip this, as well. Right. It can go the other way. And to your point too, Chris, is how do you quantify the risk you're taking as a shipper, right? By going for that lowest cost provider, right? It's exceptionally difficult to do, but I think there's a lot more noise. I think the customer behavior is changing, and that's, I think, part of why we've been actually seeing now inbound leads come in with HMD, just by shippers looking for carriers, like looking for asset companies, looking for companies who've been around a long time.
Yeah. And I also look at it that, I forget how this saying goes, but if we go back over the last 5 years and you factor in COVID, you factor in all of the disruptions that happened, freight sitting on docks for days on end because there wasn't any capacity out there. And then it kind of normalized there for a while. I feel like people, and by people, I mean like most shippers out there, not saying that they're not looking for new providers or anything like that, but they are comfortable with who they have, and they would rather take a proven, like they know what they're getting with it, as opposed to the fear of the unknown, because there are so many shitty providers in the industry as a whole. There are so much inconsistency that's out there. I understand why they don't want to onboard any new providers, because again, at least you know what you get. Like it might not be the best communication out there, it might not be the best, but it's acceptable, and people fear change more than anything.
Right.
And so I feel like that's also one of those driving factors that needs to be taken into consideration a lot more. So it's going to boil down to, how much do you want the business, right? Like, how much are you willing to go after some of these people? And that's why, I'm talking about it on the show as much as I do. When you choose that niche, especially if you're going out there and trying to build a book of business from scratch, or you're taking over an existing book of business, leverage that and go out and build inside of that vertical, as opposed to the old spray and pray methodology, which used to work. I just have not experienced success with that. When I'm out there prospecting today in today's market, my longest shippers are open deck, right? And I've been working with them the whole time. All of our business that we've developed from a new business perspective in 2025, we've onboarded like 8 new customers in 2025, all because of our niche, all because we're like, hey, listen, we only do open deck. I understand you might have some other freight, but we do full truckload, we do open deck. And then we're able to talk to them about some intricacies that most people don't know, because they're a generalist at that point, right? They're like, oh, we move it if it has 18 wheels, and that's their fucking sales strategy.
Right.
So, I just look at it as like, if we're out there and we're trying to do anything right now, and I honestly am so sick and tired, you guys, of people holding on to the, when's it going to change? When's it going to change? When's it going to change? I think people need to start accepting the fact that it might not change. And how are you going to grow in that time? Because there are people out there that are onboarding new providers. My business is proof of that, right? Like, I had 0 customers when we started this about 2.5 years ago. 0 customers. All right. We had nothing. We had 0 revenue guarantees. We had no, here's a book of business, go out there and make this work. It has all been built from scratch. Okay. So I know people out there are onboarding new providers. It just takes a hell of a lot longer than it used to.
Yeah. The sales cycles are longer. Guards are up high, right? So to gain someone's trust, it's a bit more difficult with what's going on. But yeah, we have a lot of similarities, Chris, in between our two businesses. We also started from scratch, bootstrap, right? Organic growth. And, we've actually grown more in the past 3 years than we did during, 2021, 22, because at the time we weren't really doing any, outbound type work. We weren't looking to acquire new business because we had to take care of our existing customers, and we had so much volume with the existing customers that we were just slammed. We did grow in terms of personnel, but not to the extent where we had to lay off people after the fact, right? But now we're actually averaging with our outbound sales team about 5 to 7 shippers a month that we're getting into the door with. Obviously, conversion's a bit different, right? It's not, we're not converting at all 5 or 7, but there's still a lot of opportunity, to your point, to close new business. And you hit the nail on the head. We're working as if this is the market for the next 2 years. Like, that's our mindset. And it's like, look, when it flips, it flips. There's too much noise out there. right? Obviously, know what's going on in the marketplace to be able to, kind of hedge and protect your customers in your own book, and plan for capacity and that kind of thing. But realistically, I don't see anything big happening, right? If I've had a conversation a few weeks ago with, I don't know if I want to bring up names, but it was a senior vice president of a very large insurance firm that we insure through.
Yeah.
And, I think a more kind of nuclear market disruptor that could possibly come is if insurance companies require direct integration to carrier ELD devices to be able to insure them, especially like net new, carriers.
Yeah.
That was a requirement and or a mandate. So that would be COVID 2.0 fallout, if not worse, right? And they're already, incentivizing carriers for these integrations to give them better, premiums and that kind of thing. But if that were to happen, you're looking at a completely different market, right? And I'm not even saying I'm for it or against it, right? Because I would be lying if I said, look, we know from a brokerage perspective, we do have carrier partners that, we leverage and we know how they operate and they do a phenomenal job, right? But it's just, that could be huge.
No, I know what you mean, man, because that takes away any and all opportunity. And again, I'm not saying anybody's doing it, but it takes away any and all opportunity to maybe stretch out a couple extra miles a day. And, when you're running by the books like that, right? Because again, general rule of thumb, and when I'm out there even selling to customers, right? Like I just tell them, I'm like, hey, 500 miles a day, that's average. If they got a clean hours for the day, 500 miles is about what they can average in a day. And that's pretty standard out there. But yeah, anything above that, like, yeah, man, I've been doing this for too long, man. I remember back when, paper logs, and I can say this about my father because he was an owner operator for 40 years and he can no longer testify as he's not with us anymore. He had multiple logbooks in his truck. All right. Like I was there, I was holding them in my lap and he's like, hold on, hand me that one. So like this industry's evolved, but what you're describing there, PJ, stops everything, right? It stops everything because you become uninsurable if you break the law at that point. And then like they have record of it, you'll never be able to get insurance ever again. Yeah.
And with, AI advancing so quickly too, it's just becoming easier and easier to catch. Right. And again, I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. Honestly, it's a very debatable topic of how much drivers can drive, right? Good drivers. But it would just, and the guys that are somewhat flexible, not everyone's doing right what you see online. Strong soul surrogate 1,000 miles the next day. They're doing minor adjustments here and there, right? But the issue becomes, planning becomes so much more sophisticated and labor intensive. So like if you have you're on a routing guide for a shipper and you get business, right? You're planning ahead for that truck, right? If one false move with the driver, there's still human error everywhere, right? Traffic, something that happened you couldn't account for or plan for. Now it's a domino effect. Now you have to replan, and all of that costs money, right? Mm-hmm. So your operating cost goes up. That's the problem, right? So if guys that are a bit more flexible, they're able to, still pull through, right? You just have more flexibility. That's all. But I don't want to hang on this topic too much because it's
no. I know what you mean, man. It is, but there are a lot of factors that are kind of coming down the pipeline right now, and I talk about that on the show as well. Like with the current administration, there's a lot to be seen on what is going to happen here in the industry. But again, you can't. Like, I think one of the biggest frustrations I have with a lot of talking heads in the transportation industry is a lot of people are putting out a lot of content that aren't actively working in the industry. They're just talking heads now, right? And again, it's like, I'm not here to knock anybody's hustle at all, but it's very different when there's people out there creating content who are actively operating in the industry, right? Yeah. Just like with you guys with the logistics war room, for example. There's credibility there because like you guys are doing the job. And I try my absolute best when I'm choosing guests to come on my show to ensure that they are in the industry and actively working, whether it's building a company up in the industry, doing something, and not I'm a former this. I was a broker for 4 years and now I'm doing this. It's like, man, with all due respect, if you were operating in this industry pre-COVID and you haven't been working in it since, it's not the same thing. If you have only sold in 2020 and 2021 and you built a book of business, then again, building a business isn't easy. But when you're selling in a pandemic, it's vastly different than a post-pandemic market and stuff like that, right? So it's like, I love talking to people who've been doing it for as long as you guys have, because you guys have been in it pre-COVID. You guys were doing it when eFax was a big thing, when we had to send our rate cons via that way and stuff like that, and seeing the evolution of the market. So what was like the main, speaking of logistics war room, what happened where you guys are like, we got to create a community here? Was it all the noise that you see on social media and all the people kind of like talking shit about drivers and brokers and shippers? And it's like, hey, there's got to be a group of people out there who actually care about the industry and want to build it up and help elevate others.
Right. And yeah, exactly what you're saying. I mean, a lot of it was the posting on, not to bash LinkedIn because I love LinkedIn, but like people post on LinkedIn, funny memes, people who, worked in operations for 9 months at a carrier and then somehow they're a logistics expert, telling everyone how it should operate and how they should do consulting. But really, we wanted a community for people to collaborate, share ideas, be able to help one another. And PJ and I were always getting asked to go out to dinners with carriers or customers, lunches, in-person visits. And it was the same questions getting asked every time. So people asking us, hey, how'd you build a brokerage? How are you getting in with Fortune 500 customers? How are you, building your sales team? What are you using for carrier vetting to prevent fraud? And it was the same questions over and over. And me and PJ kind of collaborated, got together, like, hey, instead of doing these lunches every time and wasting, people's money and people's time of other stuff to do, let's put a website together where we can put our ideas, our lessons, and build classes within, school, within the war room. And use real examples we had. Let's pull our HubSpot, highest email open sequences for cold email outreaches. Let's put a course together on that. Let's take the softwares we use for vetting, put it together, put into a course. And we collaborated with people like Eric Williams from Beagle to put a course together on, the RFP process and how you can use your internal tools as well as additional help like Beagle to handle that course. And then we have additional courses that we're building now and collaborating on to continue to add educational topics. But, for me personally, there's a ton in freight I still don't know and I want to learn. So it's exciting for me for like, if we got a person on there, hey, I specialize in air freight. I don't know anything about air freight. Couldn't tell you how to do it. So I would love to collaborate, build a class and put that on there to get, expertise and learn myself.
And that to me is like the literal purpose of why I do my show every single day is I want to put so much quality information out there where people don't get screwed over by, I use the term because like I don't know if you guys remember there was an uprising of like paid courses where it's like, oh, take this course and learn how to broker freight, or take this course and all of a sudden you're a carrier. And I just got so many calls from people who are like, I spent my last $2,000 and they didn't teach me how to do anything. Can you help? And I'm like, damn, dude. And I'm like, but again, I'm like, there is so much I need to learn about the industry still, but it's also like, hey, how do we put the right information out there to highlight the right people, the right companies? Because it's like, dude, I am not afraid to put how I sell out on the show. I literally tell people exactly what I say on our cold calls, what we do from an email correspondence. I do all of that stuff because am I going to be for everybody? Absolutely not. But if this helps somebody apply it to their business and see a difference and gain customers and grow, that's not taking food off of my plate at all, and I feel like that's how we actually elevate others in the industry. That's how we help keep people in business. So a lot of like the ulterior stuff just goes away and it gets drowned out because like, dude, there's a time and a place for humor. All right. There is. I have a childlike, immature sense of humor out there, but like when I'm at work, like I got a family to feed. Right. And it's like, I take this stuff very seriously. Like I have everything on the line. All right. Like I have no 401k. I emptied all that shit to make this stuff work, right? So it's like, I want to put that information out there because it's like, if that helps somebody else avoid some of the early pitfalls I've made in business, like I talk about how the best decision I made in business was when I hired my attorney to start creating contracts because I got hosed out of about, over $10,000 that I didn't have that could have possibly put me out of business, or keeping my CPA in my back pocket to help me structure my business properly, to help lower my tax burden at the end of the year, because just like everybody, I hate paying taxes, but I want to pay what I have to pay. And it's just little things like that. How do we put that out there to keep people in business?
Right. And that's why when we built this and put it together, I mean, we put a little fee on it, $9 a month, but that's, just to pay for the website and some of the tools we use. We're like, hey, skip Starbucks in the morning and you covered your fee for the month.
Yeah.
We're not trying to get rich off it, but yeah, we, put tools and email sequences we actually use. And we've had testimonials from people on it saying, hey, we used your sequence. I just changed, the name, my personal name and the company name, send it out. And we had a 37% open rate. We did 10% better than we did with our own sequence. So it's, it has proof.
How have you guys seen a growth? Like when you're out there prospecting business right now, like what is the response from people who are inside of your guys' group now about, like, is it coming from cold calling? Is it coming from email? How are they developing business right now? Is there one that's taking kind of precedent over another?
Very difficult to quantify or because our current sales process is we're doing everything, right? So we've got email sequences for every single one of our reps going in the background, LinkedIn sequences via LinkedIn helper, and then cold calling. Oftentimes, you'll get an auto reply, let's say out of office, and they'll give you other names, and then that results to them calling the office, name dropping a little bit for some familiarity. It's difficult to really, put the finger on what works more. We've had a lot of success with email, but I can't attest that all to just email. I think cold calling is still number one. A lot more companies are beginning to implement email sequences, especially now with AI, because everyone could put a sequence together.
Yeah.
So I think cold calling at the end of the day still reigns supreme in my personal opinion, because if you want to, get in front of someone, you got to talk to them, right? You talk to them, you can explain your service offering, you can ask the right questions and learn more about their business to see if you're a good fit. There's just a lot more to it, right? But we ultimately have, like a 2-call type system internally. And then we always push for discovery calls. So calls like these, right? Like Google Meet calls, where we can get 30 minutes of their time, learn more about their business, and to see if we're even a good provider in the first place or a good match for them. And we can solve for some of their problems, and obviously gives us some time to open up a deck, walk them through our service offering, our companies, who we are, what we do, what's our specialty, that kind of thing, right? But it's difficult to say, email. I think it's both, right? Volume negates luck, really. Everything, throw everything at it.
Have you guys heard of Jeb Blount, the author, before?
I have not.
No.
Yeah, I would honestly highly recommend getting his books. So I found, I don't even know how I've bought his first book, but it's called Fanatical Prospecting. And just like, because again, I think a lot of people overstate where they're at in the sales process, right? It's like, oh, I got this hot prospect. And it's like, have you ever actually talked to him on the phone?
Right.
Just because they have a cool logo and a nice website, So like he helped me streamline a lot of stuff, because it's like I was spending too much time in between calls, So it's like so now what I do when I'm going out there, man, I preload 5 calls at a time. So I like to have all the company's websites up just in the event that they actually answer the phone. I want to have specific questions preloaded for their product out there. So I do that 5 at a time, man. And I actually, if I've never talked to the prospect before, I stopped leaving voicemails because I never got called back. But it also took a minute of my time away from it. Because again, to your point, and I bring it up, PJ, because he said it best, man, it's all about volume, man. You need to get in front of more people. And if you're wasting time leaving voicemails with somebody, that you're never going to get a call back from because, dude, I don't reply to voicemails. Like, and it's even from people that I know, dude, I'll just shoot them a text back, like, hey, I'll call you later and stuff like that. How many people are actually listening to them? And if you're adding it up, say you make 50 calls in a day and you leave 50 voicemails, that's like an hour's worth of voicemails that you're leaving in a day. How many more calls could you get back out there if you stopped leaving voicemails in that initial prospecting phase? Now that changes on the follow-up. Like, hey, I talked to PJ, the decision maker. I talked to Paul, the decision maker over there. They recognize my voice. When I follow back up, I want to leave a voicemail at that time because I want them to remember my voice every time I call. So that book laid it all out for me. And I'm like, holy shit. So like that saved time to where it's like, now, man, if I hope people answer the phone, but the reality is most people don't. Dude, I can get like 40 dials in an hour now. If I'm in the zone, I'm rocking out 40 phone calls in an hour at that point, at that phase. And then when I switch over and I'm doing my follow-ups of the prospecting, I take more time to it. And then I could probably get down to about 20 if I'm leaving voicemails. Again, I'm being strategic about the messaging that I'm leaving at that time. And Fanatical Prospecting laid it all out there. And then he also has a really good follow-up book called Objections. And it talks about how do you navigate through that, right? Because cost is a thing and there's a bunch of objections, but it doesn't matter. The industries are kind of all the same. And most importantly, how are you preparing your reps to handle the objections? Because you're going to get faced with them.
And I don't want to take credit. This is 100% PJ on this, but he does with our entire sales team, calls every Tuesday, Thursday morning. And I sit in on them too, just because it's great practice. But we sit there for, hour and a half sometimes and just go through role play and do objections, answer the phone. Hey, this is Paul, whatever, we're customer routed. We do assets only. And just so our team is used to hearing that and then knows how to answer those questions and get around it. So, he does a phenomenal job getting them all trained up with that.
That's the best value add you can give out there. It's just the comfort of experiencing it, right? It's all about reps, man, at the end of the day. Like if you want to get better at cold calling, eventually you got to get you got to rip the Band-Aid off. You got to get hung up on. You got to get told no. You got to get told we're customer routed. So then you build up the comfort to know that at the end of the day, nobody's going to reach through the phone and punch you in the face. All right. You're like the worst case. I actually implemented a strategy. If somebody hangs up on me, I just instantly break out laughing. Like I started doing it and I started like making it into like a humorous interaction. And that's helped lower any potential anxiety that comes along with it. Right. Like I got hung up on yesterday. Like it happens to all of us.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, yeah. Once you stop getting embarrassed and stop caring, you succeed so much better in sales. It took me probably 2 years to get past that point on the, I was always carrier side. It took 2 years to get past that. Once I realized I don't care if they say no, I'm going to get no's, then you feel free on the phone.
No, sorry, go ahead, PJ.
Yeah, no, it's just a few points there, right? The volume versus quality. I see a lot of like posts on LinkedIn too and memes and, kind of one shitting on the other. It's like air versus water. You need both, right? Like you don't get quality without volume, number one. Number two, both are equally as important. You need both volume and quality, right? On cold calls. There's sales reps that could do 550 calls a day. There's sales reps that can do 50 a day, right? It kind of, depends on, we have a firm 150 a day per rep, but that's all they do. Their entire job, entire day consists of cold calling, business development. So they have the time, for that, but they're also quality calls. They're not on dialers, right? They're quality calls. They're doing some preliminary, kind of surface level research on the client. Yeah. And then we have more targeted campaigns too, where we'll put together with each individual rep, right? If they, let's say, came from, with experience in flatbed, for example, right? To talk more into that. And we'll reach out to all mining and mineral, right? Or anything that could go on flatbeds. We'll put together a list and then they'll do some research beforehand and then set themselves up for, a hard, like 1 hour, 2 hours of just reaching out and prospecting these guys, right? And qualifying leads. So that's one thing. One other thing is we did convert 3 customers by leaving a voicemail, just a heads up. So we did get lucky. However, you're correct, right? So if you're able to save time on not leaving, because the odds, I mean, it was maybe 3 out of, I don't know, 5,000 or something, right? So the amount of time that you can, save by not leaving those voicemails could equal more business, right? So, but I did want to say that if anyone does leave voicemails, we did have 3 conversions via voicemail.
And that's the thing though, like PJ, like the best part about it is people need to develop their own style as well, right? Because like at the end of the day, and this is why, like, I'm not anti using a script, but I'm more like you need to provide a framework and let them develop their own internal script as they're going out there. Because like literally, and I've learned this as being a father. I can tell my son one thing 100 times. PJ, you come and tell my son the exact same thing verbatim. He's to be like, "Oh, PJ, I never thought of it like that before." Like, motherfucker, I told you that. Like, So it's like it's just sometimes it's just the messenger. It's not the message itself, right? And I love what you said. Like, dude, if your whole job every single day was to just develop business, you better be hitting 150 calls. Like, it's 20 dials in an hour at that point, right? If you're working 8 hours, but when you factor in if you're doing a cradle to grave, right? Like, it's like that's the style that we're in right now. Right? And dude, and it's like I love the fact that we're busy some days and we can't make our sales calls because that means our existing customers are giving us freight. And our approach is we need to capture the revenue that we have as opposed to the revenue that we don't. And that's kind of just the way that we're building it. But again, our whole philosophy is like, as we build up our team, like, our plan is I am going to 100% lead sales until we hit 100 million a year in revenue. I will be hands-on involved in the sales process, and we're going to build up an operations team behind us at that point, because I was told this by a friend of mine who has built a business from scratch that now does over 100 million. And he's like, that was one of his big pieces of advice. He told me, he's like, dude, lead sales until you're at that point, then you'll have the resources. Cause he told me, he's like, I spent a couple $1 million on salaries that returned nothing at that point.
Oh man. We see that everywhere, especially on the carrier side, right? Yeah. I want to grow a brokerage. I want to get direct shipper business. What I'm going to do is I'm going to poach someone from Coyote, Echo, or C.H. Robinson, pay them $250K a year. And then they're going to bring their book. And a year goes by, nothing happens. Right. And they lose a lot of money because it's not the same style. Very rarely does that work out. I'm always going to be for build out your own process, build out your own, sales team and, your niche. And, you mentioned another really great thing is scripts, right? Like we also I don't believe in that. I don't believe in reading word for word and having scripts. We have a framework and we have everyone put together based on that framework in their own terms, in their own way of speaking, a personal introduction, reason for the call, right? Pitch, objections, right? So we collect every single objection that we hear, and every single one of our sales reps in their own words have to come up with rebuttals. And we'll go over all of them in front of the entire sales team, right? In their own speech. Tell them all the time, go to the meeting room, driving home from work, record yourself, say it out loud, send it to me, and if you get stuck on any word, cross it off and don't say that word. Yeah. Right. And don't try to sound smart. Most people statistically read at like a 3rd or 6th grade level, right? Yeah. It's just, you're not calling rocket scientists. You're not calling financial institutions. You're calling people, everyday people just like us, right? Be organic, understand their problems, and provide the solution. Really, that's all it boils down to. But building rapport, understanding their needs, and also like you get a lot where people are just slow right now, right? Like people don't have a whole lot going on. They don't have enough business to give to their incumbents, and then here's you, new guy, calling for business, right? Like it's going to take some more time, right? To your point earlier, right? It's just a longer sales cycle, but to have a very good CRM, have a good process, know when to reach back out, right? And I love your word track. How can I respectfully stay in front of you, right? Like that, those kind of things, right? And you set up reminders, tasks, sequences to reach back out, keep interest in that client, in that person, in that individual that you're building a relationship with, at that shipper. So, yeah.
But that's one of those things where we, I found like that objection, and I don't even want to call it an objection, is like the amount of people who are like, man, we're just not busy right now, right? Like, you sound great. We want you to follow up with us, but like, we can't even keep our current network busy with freight and stuff like that. So, that's a really good point, man. And I want more people to take that into consideration as they're going through a lot of this, because at the end of the day, it's not you sometimes, right? Like, it is the actual market, but there are opportunities out there for people if you're willing to fight for it. And dude, I love what you guys are doing with this, because like, it sounds like you guys are organically growing people. And to what you said earlier about the carriers that want to hire and poach somebody from a large broker and then think they're going to bring their book of business, I haven't met that many actual killers or hunters in the industry. I've met a ton of people who are account managers. And by account managers, I mean they were seeded with a book of business through house accounts, and then they just manage that. And again, that's a different sales style, to each their own. But the people who want actual hunters and killers to go out there and bang out 100, 150 calls a day, every single day, to onboard an account, it's a rare breed, man. There's not a lot of people out there who can mentally go through the anguish of being told no 99.9% of the time.
Yeah, 100%. And if you look at most of the big brokers, if you look at their top reps, it's probably someone from the C-suite or someone that quit and those accounts got passed down because they were an ops rep for them, or, they just stuck around long enough to where they got 10 accounts passing their name, and now all of a sudden they're running some huge Fortune 500 company's book.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. More times than not, the number one sales reps are through attrition. They just gathered the best accounts because they've been there the longest. And, again, it's a different style. Managing an account that was handed to you serves its purpose. Obviously you need that. There's a lot of value that is brought from it, but that is a completely different strategy from bringing something from an idea to execution and then to fruition.
Right. And I think that's where a lot of the big brokerages are realizing they can save money, is, hey, why are we giving this guy 15% of the GP when we just put the accounts in his name? Let's go ahead and drop it down to a managed trans and give him 8%. Yeah.
And that's exactly it. Right. Or else they're looking at it and they're like, hey, this rep was making 400 grand with commission. Let's just salary them at 250. And then we're going to save $150,000 at that point. And, again, and then some of these guys, it's you have a tough conversation, because it's like, are you worth that out there in the market if you can't develop a business? And I would argue not at all. If you can't develop a book of business, you're not going to be compensated for it.
For sure.
So dude, I think, how do people reach out to you guys about the logistics war room? Because again, I feel like it's pennies. Like you said, man, it's a cup of coffee in a month, to get in on something like this. Because if you guys are out there and you guys are creating these courses and these tracks, and again, I love highlighting individuals like yourself, because you guys are in the industry, right? Like, you're not outsiders trying to market yourself as experts. Would you say 3 months as a carrier rep and all of a sudden you're a logistics expert?
Right. And that's kind of the whole, mentality of the war room is, a community, execution first community, right? So my LinkedIn, like header or whatever it's called, is execution over theory. We don't theorize, right? Like, everything. And we don't call each other experts. Like, we're not necessarily experts, because we have to keep evolving, right? So like, anytime we go into what's going to happen in the market, right? I don't even feel comfortable speaking to that, because I'm just going off my tribal knowledge. There are genuine experts who know a lot more than we do within the war room that can give real advice, and that we go to on every single day. We check in with them to see what's going on, right? And because that's just not our field. And we want to continue to evolve, continue to learn, get better. But really, most of what we've done is like, hey, here's what's worked for us and we've done really well with. And take it for what it's worth, right? Implement it, and people have, to Paul's point, implemented, and we have some great case studies, right? And that's huge for us, right? Is the collaboration, right? And then we've had people ask too, why are you giving away all this information? Why don't you just make your own, keep this to yourself, grow your own business? Well, number one, this is a $3 trillion pie, making up 9% of the nation's GDP, and 70% of that is truckload. Like, the fact that, to think that, Chris, you and I are going to compete, it's like you and I trying to drain the ocean with buckets. Like, you're not even making a dent, right? Like, there's so much business, so much opportunity out there. And the war room has genuinely opened, not just for us, but people within the community, so many doors that I didn't know were there, right? And we're evolving quickly. We don't unfortunately have a website just yet. Again, this has been kind of duct tape and bubble gum together after hours, when our kids are in bed. But yeah, so it's all over LinkedIn. If you go to any one of our LinkedIn's, there's
thank you for
links to join the board. There you go. You could also just go to school.com, and then within the school platform, look for logistics war room, and it should come up right away.
Perfect. No, I love it. And again, I feel like I'm gonna have to have you guys back on in a couple of months. We'll do the live show on that one though as well. And anything I can do to help get this out there, I mean, by all means, you guys check them out. If you guys cannot find the Logistics War Room, PJ, Paul out there at all, hit me up. I will gladly put you guys in contact with them. That will be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. As always, if you get value in what you hear, subscribe to the show. You guys are feeling really ambitious after this one, which you should be. Rank the show on iTunes and Spotify, because if you saw value, your network's going to see value as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
Came back with a bang, window down, yelling out money, anything. Hey, ooh, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when I'm get to the bag. Hey, got the foot on the gas, pedal to the metal when the lane move